Coming up on this episode, Jonathan Kuminga is officially trade eligible. So Stevie and I discuss all the names that could potentially be targets for the Warriors over the next couple of weeks, including a couple of names that we haven't brought up in previous episodes. All right, we are recording. It's just gone 2:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in America, which means Jonathan Kuminga has now been trade eligible for 2.5 hours. Stevie, what do you make of that? Are we expecting something? This is the frustrating time for me because now I get to go to sleep every night for the next, until February 5 or until a trade actually takes place. And I just go to sleep with this overwhelming anxiety that I'll wake up to a blockbuster trade. But when do we think that happens?
Yeah, for sure. I feel you, man. I remember the 2019 offseason because I was in Indonesia basically the same time as you. So you wake up to just like Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, all this crazy shit happening all at once. I assume it's going to happen sooner than later, but I think everyone has to take a pause with the Anthony Davis news of his hand not requiring surgery. And if that's something, nothing, or everything for whoever was already interested in him, because I feel like every front office is going to have camps in all three parties, where it's just like, it was a blessing he got hurt. We were never supposed to trade for him in the first place. Now we can get him at a discount. So I guess we start there just because it's the one thing to check off. Like, me and you basically went back and forth in the DMs after we saw him got hurt. Like, and then I sent you that thing that somebody broke down really nicely, like every single individual, like hangnail that's kept him out of games since he's became a Dallas Maverick. And Luka Doncic has been averaging I don't know, 36 points or something since he's become a Laker. Do we reconsider Anthony Davis? It doesn't feel like Draymond is back in the fold of possibly being traded anymore. So I would say no, but what's your feelings? Is Anthony Davis something we really have to consider before we consider the more viable options?
So here's the reason we have to consider it. Here's the reason why Shams' report yesterday suggesting that AD will be reevaluated in 6 weeks and that he's not actually out for the season, that he won't require surgery. This is good news for the Warriors because they are coming from a place right now of pretty limited leverage. Everyone knows they want to move on from Jonathan Kuminga. And right now, there appears to be a distinct lack of viable options that the Warriors could potentially trade for. So if you are the Brooklyn Nets and you're in discussions with the Warriors over Michael Porter Jr., which I'm sure we'll get into, you're looking at it and saying, well, if you're not coming and getting our guy, who are you going after? Like, no one else is available, guys. Like, so AD technically being available and available from the standpoint of if he was out for the season, the Warriors definitely aren't trading for him because obviously if they were to trade for AD, they'd want him for a playoff run this year.
Right.
But him becoming available again, if I'm Mike Dunleavy Jr., I'm actually leaking, or if I'm a member of the Warrior front office, I'm leaking that I have interest in Anthony Davis. I flat out am. Now, that might be absolute BS. I might not have interest in Anthony Davis whatsoever, and I think we as fans can probably look at it and say, you know what, before this latest injury the groin injury and whatever else, maybe we would have had some interest in Anthony Davis. You and I spoke about it heavily. Now, the fact is some uncertainty about when he's going to return from this hand injury. I don't personally want the Warriors to trade for Anthony Davis. Do I think they should leak out that they have interest in Anthony Davis? Yes, absolutely. Because all of a sudden they can go to Brooklyn in negotiations and say, well, if you're not willing to take what's on offer for Michael Porter Jr., well, we've got this other deal lined up for Anthony Davis. Now, Brooklyn might laugh in their face, say, no, you don't. There's no way you're trading Anthony Davis. There's no way you're giving up Draymond Green. But who knows? It's another wrinkle. It's another element to this that makes the AD discussion relevant, even though no one thinks that the Warriors will trade for him. If the Warriors can somehow convince one team, and it just takes one team, that they would be interested in him, then suddenly that gives them leverage in trade negotiations when they have very, very little right now. What do you make of that?
Yeah, leaking it for sure seems like definitely something that um, hopefully somebody in the front office actually wants Anthony Davis enough that we can authentically say that we want him, even if the people that are, have the finger on the missile codes don't actually get to pull the trigger on it. It's
Yeah.
interesting with Davis because I feel like it's more of a pain tolerance thing. I was talking to one of my students yesterday. He's a neurosurgeon in Korea, and I was asking him about like when he meets people and dealing with patients and trying to understand like how much a person is actually in physical pain and how much it's with regards to how they perceive their own pain. And I don't know if you've dealt with hand things before. It can be really painful, but it's also like how much your brain allows you to say like I'm not able to do anything is huge with the hands because there's so much nerve endings in the hands and feet, and I broke this thumb and I busted this boxing, and it's like, but now that I got it tested and they told me it's not arthritis, and you go like, and you just kind of go through the pain, it's like, now it's like, you know what, it hurts sometimes, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And I feel like Anthony Davis, his whole body, he's always concerned about everything. He's worried about his next payday. If they were to trade for him, I'm just feeling like the likelihood he gets through a whole playoff run without something that sidelines him for 3 straight games in a series, the likelihood is so low. And then you pair that with your 2 stars being over 35, seems like something that they shouldn't bet on. But Mike Dunleavy getting Jimmy Butler for a pick and then maybe getting AD for, I don't know, a pick or no picks would be
Yeah.
pretty wild looking at that starting and closing lineup going into the playoffs. I hope it doesn't happen either. I didn't really want him in the first place before we even thought that he was really a viable option for that cheap and now, but it's interesting at least that he's still in the fold and that he's not going to get surgery. So,
Well, hypothetically speaking, I don't think it would cost more than the 2026 pick. I think it'd be the same as Jimmy. It'd be matching salary. It'd be like Kuminga, Draymond, and Buddy, and the 2026 pick, which you're assuming it'll be a playoff team, so it's outside the lottery for Anthony Davis. Oh, that would be my expected price. And if Dallas are asking for more than that, then I think they're kidding themselves based again on this latest injury. And Shams reported that today, like the trade market and the value that Dallas are expected to get back has significantly reduced from even a month ago when there was already question marks about AD's injury history and the contract situation and stuff like that. So I'm just putting it out there. I wouldn't be shocked if we see some reports suggesting the Warriors have interest in AD. Now, deciphering whether that's real or not
yep.
is that's going to be tough because obviously there is a legitimate reason now for them to feign interest and have it publicly known that they have interest, even if they, when it comes down to it, don't. And again, trying to convince other teams because right now for the Warriors, it's all about optionality. It's all about trying to create a market where we have multiple options that we can go to in a potential Jonathan Kuminga trade because right now seems pretty limited. The Kings have interest in JK. They're the main suitor. That's about it. Maybe the Lakers are like monitoring the situation, which I find we can talk about if you want, but I find that completely bizarre. It doesn't make any sense to me. And then there's the Michael Porter Jr. aspect, and he's like the one piece who might be available. But again, because he's the only one piece right now, Brooklyn are going to rightly ask for 2 first-round picks. And then maybe you have a sprinkling of Trey Murphy the third rumor where that's still maybe like one finger on the table as a potential. So for the
Before we move off Dallas though, like if we flip from there to their front office with this recent injury, does it now make it the only option to, if there is a suitor, is it time to move off Anthony Davis now? Because I feel like prior to this injury, the amount that they were going to get for him was too low, and they needed to get oversold instead of either A, keeping him, or B, moving him in the offseason when at least he had a little more like a little more games under the belt to show off that like I am healthy, I'm capable of putting up good numbers. I'm not a top 5 player, but I'm a top 20 player without a doubt. And now he's not going to have that opportunity because they're not going to make the playoffs. So if you're Dallas, do you move now if someone comes in with a single pick and one, you know, definitely not a blue chip young player, especially since he's getting 0 minutes under the Steve Kerr regime. If
I,
you're Dallas, do you pull the trigger if the Warriors were to offer the 2026 pick unprotected?
so personally, I actually think they would. Like, I think they would do it because I think part of it also is, and I read this in a piece. I don't know if it was from Stein or Fisher or someone put it in their recent report. I think it might have been Stein that Anthony Davis is and was the main returning piece for Luka Doncic. And while he remains at the franchise, there's almost this like stink about it.
Mm,
It's like that is a constant reminder of this abhorrent trade we made. And then so therefore, even if some people want to point to you get a bad return for AD and then that makes it even worse return for Luka, at least you've kind of parted way with the major piece he got back in the Luka trade. And so I think that's actually part of it to some degree. But if I was the Mavericks, I wouldn't be trading Anthony Davis. This is a team that has their pick this year, but then doesn't have enough ownage of their own first round pick until 2031. They need to be competitive next season. Now, if I was them, I'm just sitting AD for the rest of the year. I'm sitting Kyrie for the rest of the year. I'm trying to tank as much as I can. Cooper Flag's now got this ankle injury he picks up today. Like, rest him some if they need to. Go and get another top 3, top 4 pick. And then you've got to try and bounce pretty quickly because you don't own your pick next year. You don't own
mm.
your first round pick again until 2031. So this idea that, oh, Dallas can move on from Anthony Davis doesn't really matter what they get back because they're in for a long rebuild anyway. How can they be in for a long rebuild when they don't own their pick till 2031? That
I
just
think
doesn't
that's
make any. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. So
I think
if
that's go ahead.
yeah, no, you go because I'm fit. I just don't think it. That doesn't make any sense. Like they should want to be as competitive as they can be next season, and having Anthony Davis is going to make them more competitive than the return they're going to get right now for Anthony Davis, which is going to be crap essentially. Like that's what it's going to be.
And I think that's why there's a fixation with X players worth X amount of draft equity. And I think there's certain situations where like because they are already getting a good pick this year, especially since Anthony Davis is out for the rest of the year, whether he's in a Dallas uniform or not for the regular season, it's like if they could go to the Warriors and go, okay, you only want to give us one pick, but we want Pods or we want Moody or we want Will Richard, and we don't need to send you a first round pick. Those are the type of deals that seem like I'm sure front offices have them, but people like ourselves or the newscast of the NBA is like, this player needs to be worth this much draft equity. I don't think they need a 2026 pick gambling on the 18th pick in the draft. They should be able to identify young players who have already played NBA minutes and try to pair them with Cooper Flag. That should be their route forward. So when they do trade Anthony Davis, because Anthony Davis will not be a part of the next Mavericks title, that's pretty much guaranteed in stone, is that how can we find young players who can be the role player against? I mean, they're supposed to have their flagship already. So I don't think like they have one more bite at the apple this year in the draft with the top 5 pick. Hopefully that's what they're hoping to tank themselves into. I think they should try to identify, can we get some sort of role player? Now, maybe they don't like Pods or Moody or Will Richard. I don't know. Yeah, we all value our young players more than anybody else. But I think that should be the route, whether it's now or in the offseason.
Well, I think that's why they have actual interest in Kuminga, and there were the reports they went to the Warriors about the AD trade in the first place, because I think they could look at Kuminga and say, well, he's a guy on a very movable contract. We're not locked into it. We can bring this guy in. He's on the timeline of Cooper Flag. He's already in his 5th NBA season, but has still obviously got untapped potential from the way that the Warriors have underutilized him so far. So that's kind of the perfect guy you're talking about. Again, rather than necessarily pinning your hopes on the draft, which they can't do, obviously, beyond this year. Do you have anything else on the AD conversation?
I mean, I don't think. Plus, I just think that like there was a moment where Green was in discussions internally, and I think that moment has passed. I don't think he has to do much positive to make that make the smoke go away, and it's already gone. So I would prefer the Davis trade to happen simply because of that. because it seems like that's the only trade where that's going to happen. But
Yeah.
it feels like the tone is like, nah, Steph and Draymond are going to go for it regardless of who we acquire at the deadline. So I think Davis
Yeah.
is just like you said, using Davis as bait in order to get a better deal for something else seems like the most likely outcome.
Yeah, I think the whole Draymond aspect was 50% of it came from his own poor form there through particularly the month of December and early Jan. And then 50% of it came from AD being available. Now it's like AD's not really available and Draymond's been playing a little bit better of late, it must be said. And therefore that kind of just takes it off the table altogether. I don't see anyone else that's available right now. Like you and I have spoken about the package you like with Porter Jr. and Claxton, where you send Draymond out. They're not gonna. I don't mind that. I don't mind
Yeah.
it, but
But we haven't heard anybody besides like just people talking, but we haven't heard any type of idea that Claxton and Porter Jr. would be packaged together to the
yeah,
Warriors.
yeah.
Not one report. We've heard they're interested in Claxton, and that was
Mhm.
a while back. And then the Michael Porter Jr. Obviously, you can't go anywhere without seeing that type of stuff pop up. Uh,
Yeah,
If we only get Michael Porter Jr., so I guess we transfer over to the Nets. Like, do you think that makes them a contender? Because I think it's a huge upgrade. I
yeah.
think the team is significantly better. I think that they can punch above their weight in any series and could beat any team in a 7-game series. But the likelihood that they're going to win multiple 7-game series with the front court that we have, adding Michael Porter Jr., who is a league average defender at best on his best day, I just don't see it, man.
I think they can be dangerous because I think Steph, Jimmy, Michael Porter Jr. trio offensively, because I think that's what I mean. Yes, the playoffs are about defense as well, but KD said it. It's sometimes about getting a bucket, right? And particularly in the playoffs, you get down to a half court set, and that's why I think like the Warriors offensively so far this season have just been league average, even though Steph's still great, even though Jimmy is still pretty close to prime Jimmy as well. And so to me, I think Michael Porter Jr. would be a fairly significant upgrade. I mean, I was watching some of that game today against the Pelicans. It's really weird because some of the shot making stuff is off the charts. Like he's doing this like behind the back dribble sidestep three over Trey Murphy the third, who's a long defender. I was like, I kind of made me laugh because I was like, there's the two guys, the Warriors, what kind of thing? But he makes this shot. I'm just like, this is absurd. And then like another step back over Zion from the wing. And I'm like, man, this is some crazy shot making the Warriors could really do with. And then on the other end of it, I'm like, if he's taken that shot early, like early shot clock, and steps out on the floor and he misses, that's like, is Steve Kerr going to be really happy with that? Probably not, kind of thing. So I actually think a guy like MPJ would maybe bring some frustration with perhaps his shot selection at times. But if he can, on the whole, remain efficient, and when I mean efficient, like again, I've spoken about, if he just put up the numbers he put up with Denver last season, not the numbers he's putting up this season in Brooklyn because they're understated. He's a number one option. If he goes back to being a number three option, and he's putting up what he did in Denver, which was 18 points a game, 50% from the floor, 39% from three, or something about that. That's pretty good. And that gives the Warriors a legitimate third scorer, which they need right now. Otherwise, as scary as Steph can be, because I think the Steph and Jimmy combination already kind of can put a little bit of threat into opposing teams. But I don't think if you're looking at Denver, if you're looking at OKC, if you're looking at other top teams in the West, I don't think it frightens them whatsoever. Now, if you add a shot maker like Michael Porter Jr., it's essentially like putting another version of Clay on the team where it's like this dude might shoot his team out of a game by going like 2 of 10 from the floor. But you know what? We're actually kind of scared because he might go 10 of 13 for 25, 30 points and win the game for them as well. And so I think if you're Steph Curry, don't you want the chance? Don't you want a guy who can go off for you potentially and win your playoff game? And that's what I feel like the Warriors are lacking right now. I mean, I want to talk about DeAnthony Melton in a second, but I mean, he's given you 19, 20 points here and there. Don't know if that's sustainable or not, but like like there's no other guy that can go for 30. There's just not. Like there's Steph and Jimmy, and that's it. And most NBA teams can at least point to having like at least 3 players so they can say, you know what, on their best day they can go for 30. The Warriors just do not have that whatsoever.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify. I mean, like, my DMs are basically between you and Athletic Alchemy just spamming Michael Porter Jr. porn for the last 3 weeks, and it's all like, I know this sounds like a bit blasphemous, but it's not another Clay. It's kind of like a 6'10" Steph, like a Payless version of a stretched out Steph, because the type of shots that he's taking, at least in Brooklyn, aren't
Mm,
particularly like I'm wide open, pass me
mm,
the rock, I hit this spot up three that I ran to. He's
yeah,
taking these ridiculous, sometimes off the dribble.
yeah,
Or even if he's not taking a dribble, the route that he took to find this window of he's not even open.
mm,
He's able to get it off and make this shot. The shot making level is, I would say, the type of shots and the shot quality that he is not just taking but making might be the best and most outrageous in the league. Full
yeah,
stop, no caveats. Because
mm,
there's no spacing on that team. That team is terrible. But his
yeah,
shot making alone, and then the reason I've walled into Claxton, their combination of being able to be so big but so flexible offensively and dynamic has just won them weird games that they shouldn't have won otherwise. So,
mm,
of course, I'd rather them get him and not get anybody at all. And I think he is the best offensive option. And he does a lot defensively with regards to rebounds, something we don't have. But like,
yeah,
I just feel like the front court, like we've had a lot of hope in post. Trace Jackson Davis somehow back outside of the rotation. Don't know how it's possible. Yeah, playing Guy Santos instead of Trace Jackson Davis. A lot of people are happy about that. Guy Santos is not a playoff NBA player as much as we pray to the NBA gods that he will be. Like, he is a regular season player because of his energy, but like, I don't know, man. The front court, I just feel like we are dangerous. Like, we will spoil someone's playoff run.
mm,
I just don't think it's leading to a title. Now,
yeah.
if that's the biggest move they're willing to make, cool. And I love that it solidifies the rotation a bit. At least, at least we'd hope so. If we see him sitting in a fourth quarter and we have another Far God lineup, uh, it's possible, right? But yeah, it's probably the best move available.
So we know the Warriors' reported stance is that they only want to give up 1 first-round pick for Michael Porter Jr., and this has been the thing, like, my valuation of him has always been, over the last few weeks kind of thing, has always been around 1.5 first-round picks. So, what do you do then? If you're Mike Dunleavy Jr., are you willing to give up a second first-round pick? What first-round pick is that? Because obviously the difference between this year's 2026 and 2032 beyond Steph is so much different. So what's the absolute maximum you're willing to go to, I suppose, to get MPJ, assuming the outgoing salaries are Kuminga, Moody, and Hill?
I'll start with Brooklyn. If I get offered the unprotected 2028 pick, uh, not only would I take it, I assume they would. I think they're posturing. They love what's happening right now with regards to the way he looks, but they've already kind of let the cat out of the bag that he is going to get traded. Yeah, it's not like, oh, we're shopping him, but let's see how it goes. No, like everybody's saying he's on the block and he won't be here past February 15th. They traded Kevin Durant for like 150 first round picks somehow when it's all said and done. So one more additional just ends up. They're calculating their success right now by how successful the ripple effects of the Kevin Durant trade were, not so much of what they are at the moment. So if it's only a 26 pick, they're probably going to say no. Are we willing to go 26 and 28? I feel like that's why I was always so obsessed with the idea of Claxton, not just the fit, but it's like it's not just Claxton. I keep going into their roster, going, is there anybody else that I like that somehow bridges the gap of one pick
Okay.
and 2 picks? And
Can I,
there's not really anybody else.
can I throw one at you? So this is
Go
the
for it.
one because I'm like you, I'm like, if MPJ is worth 1.5 first and Brooklyn need 2, all right, I need something else back. And there's that little buffer where Kuminga, Hill, Moody are making about $5 million more than MPJ. So you should be able to go and get another guy to bring back in the trade. How about I throw Trace Jackson Davis at you, Brooklyn, and I get Dayron Sharp back? and I give you the 2026 and the 2028.
As somebody
Daron
watching way too much Brooklyn Nets, Daron Sharp doesn't do fuck all for me, man. Like, just like, and he's not gonna play. That's what's gonna happen in the
He's not playing?
playoffs. He's not gonna play. That's what's gonna end up happening. I don't know. He's the type of player that like he's got size. He doesn't have much bounce. He's like league average on both ends of the floor. He's a bit sluggish. I don't know. He doesn't do anything for me, man. I'd rather have Trace Jackson Davis if he's in the rotation. So
Okay, alright, yeah.
sorry to shut it down. I wish I've watched those minutes too. Just like, come on, play a little better, because that's exactly the type we need. We need like another big body who somehow can grab 8+ minutes. Like there's a lot of Time Lord talk. Like maybe we can just snatch him almost for nothing. That type of player that like at least amplifies our rotation a bit. I just don't think Daron Sharp's that guy.
I'm wondering if there's a way you can do, because remember there was the Portland interest in Kuminga? I'm wondering if is there a Time Lord Michael Porter Jr. trade? I don't think there is, because I just think it's too much. It's too much salary, unfortunately, without giving up Draymond.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what's
that's one of the
frustrating.
big reasons why we've been talking about moving Draymond from the start or from the offseason, is because it's like we get to this little threshold where it's like, okay, these are the players you can get with him and these are the
Mm,
players you can get without him. And like all of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, we can get to the number except for we have to include Al Horford, Melton, and like it doesn't work. You can't send out 8 players. So
mm. Yeah.
yeah, I think the numbers become too complicated.
I just wanna mention Melton to you for a second, because I increasingly think he plays an incredibly underrated role in what the Warriors do in the next 3 weeks before the Feb deadline, for a couple of reasons. First of all, and I wanna credit Anthony Slater for this on, the Warriors Stock Report podcast a few weeks ago, because he was kind of mentioning Melton and was like, "Well, if Melton becomes a real piece, then that could make the Warriors, like, force the Warriors into saying, oh, okay, now we've got this Melton piece. Maybe we're only one piece away from legitimate contention, and that could push them in to a seismic trade before the deadline." And I was like, that's actually interesting. And that's how it's played out to me. It's like now all of a sudden you've got a guy who looks like a real 25-minute per game playoff piece for you that you can trust. Therefore, are you now closer to being a threat than what you previously were? I mean, they are a better team now with D'Anthony Melton than they were a month ago without him. That's just absolute facts. And therefore, do they think, all right, now we're only one Michael Porter Jr. move away or something from becoming a legitimate threat? But the other aspect to this, which I think is maybe even more interesting, is that this guy has a $3.6 million or $3.7 million player option for next season. If he remains healthy, which is an if, given his history, there is absolutely no way he's picking that one up. He's opted out as soon as Frazier hits, and he's like, I'm testing the market. Do you have to put some contingencies in place to ensure you keep D'Anthony Melton beyond this season, or is that just a complete look? Because if you're acquiring Michael Porter Jr., I think I brought this up on the Patreon, but not on YouTube / this podcast. If you acquire Michael Porter Jr. and you're on the hook for $40 million next season, not only are you giving up Kuminga, Hield, and Moody, you are basically saying we are letting D'Anthony Melton walk in free agency, because you will not be able to re-sign him if he's playing this well, and he's going to opt out and ask for at least $10 million at an absolute minimum, maybe 15 to 18. How much of a role does that play in these discussions, where you've got to actually factor him into the trade almost, even though you're going to keep him for the rest of the season? Or do you just say, well, we don't care about beyond the season. It's about trying to have another playoff run with Steph and Jimmy and Draymond this season. Therefore, we're just going to we're going to make the move. We're going to have D'Anthony Melton and Michael Porter or whoever it is for the rest of the season. We'll kick the can down the road and then work it out in the off season. How much do you make of it?
I think it's a natural like thing for fan bases and for people who follow teams to worry about retaining players. I don't think front offices like I don't think front offices are particularly concerned with things that they can't control at this magnitude. Like, it's almost like a gift to get this type of player on both ends, a gift from the franchise to give him to give him a contract in general when we have no idea if he comes back healthy. But it's also the idea like you're being gifted a specific role that's perfect for you next to the perfect player to play next to in order to use it as a trampoline in order to get the contract you really deserve.
Yeah.
And I think it's similar to like we go back to the 21 offseason with Otto Porter Jr. We get him for a minimum contract with both parties understanding that if you play as well as we hope you do, we won't be able to afford you.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, unless if he plays the way that he's playing, unless he's getting, Kawhi Leonard style money underneath, he's gonna play elsewhere, and good for him. But if he's gonna stay healthy, like that's a huge if, man. He's been healthy for a minute, so like,
Hmm.
but with regards to his actual play, his ability to create inside, his ability to finish the way that none of our young guards can, it's a game changer. We have just no pressure on the rim from our front court. Like Post was doing it a bit earlier in the season, and now it's kind of evaporated. With Draymond's back, he dunks, when he feels he's able to. And D'Anthony Melton, even if he's not slamming it, there's a pressure that his floater, that his inside game just completely changes, especially in a closing unit. So offensively and defensively, he seems like the closing two guard, regardless of who's running. I hope they
Yeah.
just keep him out of I hope they keep him out of the starting lineup, man. You got to keep him under 25 minutes. And Kerr won't do that. When Kerr sees something he likes, he just keeps pressing the button until it breaks. That's just the way he's going to run, for better or
Yeah.
worse.
Well, I think Celebrini is probably keeping him under wraps at the moment, saying, Steve, I know you want him for 30 minutes, but we're keeping him at 25. And I don't know how long that's going to last, but he could definitely, if you go and get a starter before this deadline, if you upgrade the Moody piece to Michael Porter Jr., then I could see the starting lineup continuing where you start really big with like Steph, Jimmy, MPJ, Draymond, and Post. Now, perimeter defensive issues there are very significant. But come playoff time, I could easily see them saying, "No, hang on a second. Our best
Right.
lineup is Steph, Melton, Jimmy, MPJ, Draymond. We're just going to start that way." Obviously, it's going to depend on the matchup and stuff like that. But I don't know. Your comparison to Otto Porter Jr., like Otto was kind of, I mean, he wasn't old, but he was. You could see he was kind of coming towards it. The Warriors just got one good year out of him. He was retired, 18 months later. D'Anthony Melton, yes, he's got a lengthy injury history, but he's 27 years old. Kind
Sorry,
of
before
in
you
the
continue though, but Otto Porter did get the contract.
yes,
So
yeah,
he got a
he got
$10
a
million contract from
yeah,
Toronto. It was
yeah,
a multi-year deal. So
yeah,
like,
2 years, 12 or whatever it was, yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair, but I think Melton I think Melton could be more impactful for the Warriors going forward than Porter would have been if they'd managed to retain him. I don't know, I'm just super impressed by the way
it's a
he's
bit
playing.
blasphemous, but like Otto Porter Jr.'s got a lot of cachet with the Warriors fan base for that
Yeah,
22
absolutely.
title. Like there's games where I know Draymond Green carries the title like he won that title all by himself, but Otto Porter Jr. without him, I don't even know if that front court works in a lot of the minutes in
Yeah.
those series that he
No,
won against the Mavericks in Boston. But if we can do a transition from Melton's ex teammate over in Memphis, there are whispers that if Ja is on the trade block, whether he gets moved or not, because I don't know why anybody's trading for John Moran. What about Triple J? It wasn't my
yeah.
idea. Athletic Alchemy was pushing it hard on his video yesterday
Mm,
about, you know, it's one of those moves that because he only makes 36, 37 this
mm,
year, we can get him without including Draymond, so it's an actual possibility. The only problem is he goes from 37 to 49 next year. So that whole idea of who can we keep? We are second apron team when the day starts if
yeah.
Triple J is acquired. Are you willing to? It's not really mortgage the farm because I don't think that he's worth what he was worth 2 years ago when he was wrongfully given Defensive Player of the Year. But you kind of have to mortgage all the optionality moving
Yeah.
forward. Not so much draft equity, or you don't have to give everything, but you have no economic mobility and optionality if you acquire a player that now makes 37 and then makes 49 the next year.
Yeah, it's funny. It's good you brought that up because I mentioned him in an article for Blue Man Hoop earlier today and on the Patreon as well. It makes a lot of sense from an on-court standpoint, is that it's kind of like Anthony like he's a lesser name than Anthony Davis, but it kind of kills two birds with one stone because you upgrade your big man position and you also kind of get that third scorer who's going to give you 17, 18 a game. Now, it might not be as flashy as Michael Porter Jr. necessarily with the shot making, but then you also get the defensive stuff. Now, maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. isn't the defender right now that, he was a couple of years ago. He still is going to improve your team on that end of the floor. So I think that makes a lot of sense if he's available. Again, how many draft picks am I willing to give up? Not many because of the contract. As good of a player as he is, he's not worth $50 million a year, which is what you are buying into. He's got 205 over 4 years remaining after this season. Like, I ain't giving up much for that because that's just not a valuable player in today's CBA. It's just not, for as good as he is. Now, maybe the Warriors say, you know what? We're happy to take that on because we want to give Steph and Jimmy and Draymond an opportunity to win. And I think it would catapult your team. You could even make the argument that Jaren Jackson Jr., if you take the contracts out of it, if you just look at the players, I'd make the argument I'd prefer Jaren Jackson Jr. over at Michael Porter Jr. You can look at the flashy numbers and stuff at MPJ and the shot making stuff like that. But from a two-way kind of presence standpoint, I would probably prefer Jaren Jackson Jr. But again, the contract situation, the good thing about MPJ is that he's only got 1 year remaining on his deal. That means that the Warriors, who are trying to preserve cap space in 2027 to go out and potentially do something, we'll wait and see. But they can do that if they trade for Michael Porter Jr. You're not doing that. You're cashing in and investing in $205 million with Jaren Jackson Jr. if you trade for him. So will they do that and ruin their cap space for 2027? I wouldn't mind it because I'm just like, are we sure they're getting a better player? Like, are we sure they're getting a better player than Jaren Jackson Jr. in free agency in 2027? It's very, very unlikely to me. So I wouldn't hate it. I think if I was Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy, I'd probably be going to Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond and saying, if we do this, and I think we discussed this in terms of marketing as well.
Yep.
If we do this and we invest in this guy who's got $200 million left on his deal, we're going to need some kind of assurance from you, and particularly Steph, who's going to be 38 years old in a couple of months. We need an assurance that you're taking less than the max in 2027 after this deal. So we're going to have 1 year where we're paying Triple J 50, Jimmy 50 plus, Steph 60 plus, and Draymond 27, 28. We're going to be a second apron team. We need assurances from you three veterans, and particularly Steph, who's making over 60. You ain't asking for the max. You ain't getting the max beyond that, okay? Because we're doing this investment for you, okay? This is the trade-off. We're making this investment in a $200 million player to try and win you another championship. The trade-off for you is you ain't getting the max on your next deal, okay? That would be my argument from Joe Lacob, Mike Dunleavy to Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green. When it comes to Jaren Jackson Jr. or any player that's got $200 million left on their deal.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting with Memphis because Ja is the one getting pushed. So Triple J's availability is more speculation. There hasn't been like we're shopping Jaren Jackson Jr., but they are one of the few franchises that seems to be level-headed and logical and understanding what they have and what it might actually be worth to somebody else, not themselves. The Bane trade proves that in the offseason. Ballsy move, getting that many. Like, you basically said, we don't have enough with what we have, and somebody offered more than he's worth, and they took it, and that's one of the most underrated trades in the last decade. Getting that much draft equity for an above averaged guard who is a semi above average defender and a good 3-point shooter. Yeah,
Mm.
like Jaren Jackson Jr. is an interesting player, man, because as much as I think he's overhyped, and especially the year that he won the Defensive Player of the Year, I agree with you. And that was the first thing I saw. Right when I saw Alchemy's video, I texted him. I was like, I'd probably take him over Michael Porter Jr., but mostly because of our front court rotation. It's not him on his own, it's that it solidifies the front court. It makes it where Post is what he's supposed to be, an above average backup big. But right now, we need him as a starting big because we don't have nothing. Draymond at the 5 is not the answer, and especially Draymond overtaxed at the 5 is not the answer. So the thing is though, as we have seen that Jaren Jackson Jr. last year in the regular season was a beast. Offensively is kind of like a poor man's Karl Anthony Towns and kind of like a better version of Karl Anthony Towns in a way on defense. But in the postseason, man, it seems like he likes to pick up at least 3 or 4 ticky-tacky fouls every single game. I'm wondering if he's playing next to his brother Draymond, that it's better or worse having someone like that yelling in your ear that you're not able to do shit like that. I do think that my question before about Michael Porter Jr., does this make us a title team? And my answer is no, even though I think it's makes us much better. And I think that if we had a front court that worked, I'd rather go for Michael Porter because it looks like he's kind of this anomaly. Like nobody would trade a player that's this good except for that he ended up in this spot where he was supposed to be moved and they don't want to wait till the fire burns out and he's not worth what he is right now. But I think we are a contender if we get Triple J because of what it does. He's just a perfect fit because of his 3-point shooting and defensive flexibility. I think him next to Draymond becomes one of the better defensive front courts. On paper, they're going to say it's the best. I don't know if that's true, but it will be one of the better defensive front courts in basketball.
I wonder if you could, because Jaren Jackson makes slightly less than MPJ, would you try, because I just did it on the trade machine, you could actually throw Pods in instead of Moody, which might sweeten the deal for Memphis, who might value, I would say Pods still holds more value than Moody in a trade, I'm
Sure.
assuming. And then if you're the Warriors, you can keep bringing Melton off the bench and starting Moody if you wanted to. And you could have like Steph, Moody, Jimmy, I'm literally writing out as I speak, Draymond, Triple J, and then you've got Melton, Horford coming off the bench. That's a pretty good top 7 in a playoff rotation, I reckon. Steph, Moody, Jimmy, Draymond, Triple J, Melton, Horford. And then you can throw Post in there for a couple of minutes if you want some extra size. I don't know, you're still going to have Will Richard and Guy Santos and GP2 and I don't know if I'm missing anyone else, but yeah, that seems pretty solid to
If I'm
me.
Memphis, I'm probably wanting Moody and Pajemski in the trade. And
Okay.
because I don't think there's a world where the Warriors are like, here's 4 first-round picks. Those dames seem to be like
Yeah.
they're in the rearview mirror and they'll find their way back into the NBA discussion. But for the moment, GMs are putting pause on just throwing that many picks out into the ether. But I think that they want both those guys. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the trade that he was looking at was it was a Moody, JK, and Will Richard trade. I think I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think that we like Will Richard a lot. I don't think the rest of the league has. Every team's kind of got a Will Richard. Yeah, somebody that their fan base adores, but the rest of the league's like, who the fuck's that guy? I don't know that guy yet. Oh, he looks pretty good if you hit him on the right night. But I
Yeah.
think if I'm Memphis, I'm just like, okay, if I'm gonna move off this guy, either I need an excess amount of draft picks or I need a little more bird in hand. Like I see some guys that I can build a young core around right now. I think JK becomes more attractive too if all of a sudden you just have this influx of, as long as one of these guys hits, it looks like it was a decent deal type of
Yeah.
trades.
Yeah. 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 It'd be interesting to see how many picks the Warriors would be willing to give up for Triple J because, again, that contract means that he's not overly valuable, but will like Memphis view it like that, or they just say, no, we don't care. Like you're giving us minimum 2 unprotected first round picks along with like Kuminga, Moody, and Pods. Like,
I think
or
that's
building
honestly
something.
probably a fair deal if you weren't like if you're just like a unbiased third party and you said two for if it's 26 and 28, let's put like mild protections on 28 and those three young players for Triple J. Like the three young players we're talking about, the reason why they want all three is because an individual one isn't worth much. They're
Mm,
hoping that one of them pops, but like
yeah,
nothing that Moody, Pajemski, or JK have done in the last calendar year makes it where you should particularly value any of those players at the moment in an exchange.
yeah, nah, absolutely. All right, have you got anything else for us as we get into this now Jonathan Kuminga trade eligibility period, which
Have
who
you
knows
have
how
you
long will last?
have you thought a little bit more about because since we spoke last time, it seems like the Blazers type of talk. Like there's some speculation of Time Lord, Jeremy Grant type of
Yeah,
stuff. Probably even there's probably people I haven't heard talking about Drew Holiday because their team just doesn't seem like it's worth keeping as is, and they should get some value, some veterans. After a week of like thinking about if that's like if Michael Porter Jr. gets traded elsewhere, like let's say today we find out afterwards that he's sent to Detroit or whatever, and the
yeah.
Triple J stuff's just smoke, and Anthony Davis ends up staying in Dallas. Is there anybody that you particularly feel strong about? Like, do you feel strong about like that Jeremy Grant is an upgrade that they should still consider?
Well, did I mention it to you about like Jeremy Grant being like the absolute final option if you get to like February 5 kind of thing? It's like no one else is available, everyone else is gone. Then yeah, sure. Like I don't love it, but it's like it's an upgrade, I suppose. Where it'd be like, yeah, Kuminga and Hill or Moody for Jeremy Grant. Like, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. You could do. I think you could do like Kuminga, Healed, Moody for Jeremy Grant and Time Lord. Maybe
Mhm.
be very close to the mark anyway. Yeah, sure, sure. I don't love it. I don't think it makes you a genuine title threat, but does it make your team better? Yes. Like, I think it has to, I suppose. So, sure, sure. But that's like an absolute last resort to me.
People in the comments brought up Laurie Marketing again. It seems like Utah just like we've just heard nothing since like there was a lot and then there was a little and then there was nothing and they look kind of nice sometimes enough to like make the fan base feel like we have something real moving forward even though I think everybody who's in the know knows that they don't. Do you feel like there is a 1% chance that Laurie Marketing's moved by the deadline or he just likes being in Utah a little too much?
Yeah, I don't. I feel like if there was a chance, we would have heard more about it. Like maybe there is a player out there, maybe it's Markkinen, or maybe there's a player we have literally not discussed who is like a genuine star caliber player who the Warriors suddenly acquire. Like the Desmond Bain trade we just spoke about. Like
Mhm.
there was literally nothing about that. And then one day I woke up and it was like the Orlando Magic have traded 4 first round picks for Desmond Bain. I was like, whoa, okay, that no
That
one
blew my
discussed
mind.
that
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
That had no smoke around it. So maybe, like, who knows? Maybe I'm sure the Warriors have probably checked in and seen how Utah are going, see if they want to change their mind. But no, I would be shocked if Larry Markkinen was on the move anywhere, let alone the Warriors before the deadline. Is there anyone
There's
else you
one
wanted to bring up?
yeah, there's one more player because we're kind of going off the cuff. I hadn't thought about him except for right after we had chatted. I was just watching Miami, and sometimes what's good is like hopping on and listening to like I don't know the locked in on whoever that
Yeah,
team actually is to get their worries and concerns. And apparently,
yeah,
like Kalel was taken out of the starting lineup because the Kalel Bam front court has him like when the season started. Kalel Ware was like putting up 20 and 15 on a regular
yeah,
basis. And now it seems like the the love internally is divided. And he only makes 4 million. So he's that type of player that, like, okay, if you went and got MPJ, are you willing to go overpay for a big that you don't really know what he is and you don't know how Steve Kerr will use him? Like, First, do you think Miami is interested in parting with him? Because they've already said they're not parting with Bam this season, even though he has the same Triple J $37 to $50 million jump next year. And do you think that they'll part? They'd
I
be
I
interested to talk about Khalil Ware.
I literally laugh at the idea of Khalil Ware, not because I don't mind him as a player, not because he's not interesting. That is like the most un-Steve Kerr player in the entire league. There is just absolutely no way that Mike Dunleavy's coming to Steve Kerr and being like, yeah, I got heat on the phone. Pat Riley's willing to deal as Khalil Ware. What do you reckon? There's no way Steve Kerr's been like, yeah, sure, I can use that guy for 20 minutes a night. There's dead set no. There is. I'm sorry. There is more chance that Dayron Sharp is in a playoff rotation for the Warriors than Khalil Ware is. Like that's just he's like he's just another version of like Kuminga and like a better version of Wiseman, where it's like this dude who has talent, has potential, when he plays big minutes can be really productive from a box score standpoint, but he's also just flat out just going to make too many mistakes for Steve Kerr to be like, yeah, I trust this guy on the floor and on a big stage in the playoffs. So interesting name, sure.
Yep.
And you know what, depending on what the price was, I'd take a flyer, sure. But is Steve Kerr like going to use
Yeah,
that
I think
dude?
the price is going to be too steep too, where it's
Yeah,
like it's going to be a gamble and it's going to be an expensive one. And like you said, Steve Kerr wanting to play Khalil Ware, ask Walker Kessler what it's like being 7 foot and not shooting threes and playing on an Olympic team. I think he played
yeah.
like what 11 minutes the whole summer that year. So yeah,
Yeah, there's no way. Interesting though, like, I mean, again, who knows? Like, there could be someone, as I said before, that we have not mentioned whatsoever, who could be thrown up here as a legitimate uh, trade option for the Warriors that we haven't even spoken about yet on January 15th. But
sure,
we'll wait and see. I think Porter Jr. is definitely the most realistic one of potential needle moving deals for the Warriors
for
before the
sure,
deadline. I don't know. We'll wait and see. I'm going to get super I just any Warriors front office people listening, please don't make the deal until like in the afternoon US time, because otherwise I'll miss it. Fortunately, the Jimmy Butler trade this time last year, they did it like right before a game at like 6-7 p.m. at night US time. Great for me. It was like lunchtime. The Jordan Poole Chris Paul trade happened at like 2 a.m. for me on draft day in 2023. I woke up and I've got all these notifications from people writing about it for me, and like it's like I'm literally 6 hours late to the party here. So that's my only hope. I'm almost like care less about what the Warriors get back. I just I just hope they make the trade in the afternoon or at night, so I don't miss out on it. And I'm sure you're probably the same. Any closing comments from you?
nah, I just hope it happens sooner than later. I'm okay waking up to it, but yeah, it would be nice to be able to see it when it happens for sure.
Yeah, we need to jump on social media for the breaking news and stuff like that. All righty, thanks very much again, guys. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, please do that. Thanks again if you're tuning in via the podcast feed as well. And we'll talk again soon. Stevie, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Peace out.